3495 just outside Peru.
South 3495 Phoenix Tower, runway 26, certainly.
Now we've flown this route a few times together now, including the Coyote 2 arrival that we're about to hop onto here in just a second when we pass the Drake VOR. And if I remember correctly, and I imagine I do, when we get to Brusser, one of the waypoints on our star, we're going to need to be at 12,000 feet. So that being said, we're going to start descending here pretty soon, and we need to go ahead and take care of our descent checklist. So the first thing we want to do is take care of our cabin pressurization, and we're going to hop down here to do that, and that's this guy. And remember, we want to set the landing field pressure altitude plus 500 feet. That's where we need to be. So right now at Phoenix, it's 2987. So to do that, you take you subtract 2987 from 2992. So I'm just doing the math as we go so that you guys get to experience it with me here, right? So that is what, 0.5? Yep. So that's 0.05. Then you multiply that by 1,000, and that is what, 5 feet difference. But because it's lower than standard pressure, you actually increase by 5 feet. So the landing field elevation of 1,100 feet and change means that, well, it's 1,135 feet, so 1,140 feet. That's what we want to set our cabin altitude to. Wasn't that fun? Okay, so cabin altitude is the outside here, so we want to set that to, that's times 1,000 feet there. We need to roll this all the way down. You can see our pressure. You know what? I didn't set it earlier. That's why. So 1,140 feet. That's 1,150 right there. So right about there is 1,140. And there we go. Our cabin altitude has been set to the landing field pressure altitude plus 500 feet. The rate control selector knob on the King Air 200 is set at the 12 o'clock position, and we're going to go ahead and use that here as well. Altimeter gets set when we cross below 18,000 feet. Again, it'll be 2987. Cabin signs are as required. They will remain where they are. Windshield anti-ice is not needed, and power will be as required to give the desired rate of descent. So we've already gone ahead and set 12,000 feet here. That's where we want to be when we get to Brusser. So let's go ahead, and here's what we're going to do. Is I'm going to use the, where's it at? Flight change, right here. Bam. At 212 feet, right? I'm sorry, 212 knots. And so what I do is I actually roll the throttles back, and you'll see that as the aircraft starts to slow, which it will here in a minute. Come on now. Oh, I'm just looking down here to make sure my throttles are even. Alright, bring those back a little more. So as the aircraft starts to slow, when we use the FLC or flight level change mode, as the aircraft slows down, it starts to descend in order to what? Bring the speed back up to 212 knots. And then I can adjust how fast I want it to fly by using the speed knob here. So if I wanted to say I wanted to fly at 220 knots, if I crank this up to 220, you see it's starting to descend much faster to try and get that speed up there. We're going to keep it at actually 215 for now. We want to be at or below an indicated airspeed of 250 knots when we cross Brusser, and at 12,000 feet. So we're going to get down at 12,000 feet. We'll keep an eye on this for a second. You see we're getting close to 215 knots. And what you'll see here, you'll see our rate of descent start to decrease so that we don't overspeed. Or it should anyway, if it works properly. And there it goes. So we've gotten up to 220 knots here, and you can see just a little bit it's starting to decrease that rate of descent so that we don't go over to it. Well, at this point it's up to 220, but we don't want to go over 215. So we're going to have to take into account that there's going to be a little bit of fudge factor in there, if you will. And in this case, you can see that it got all the way up to 220 knots before it really started to slow that rate of descent. But that's what the flight level change mode is for. You could alternatively use the vertical speed mode if you wanted. We could use the VNAV mode, but I don't really have any experience with the VNAV here in the King Air 350, so I'm not entirely confident with how it works at this point. So we're going to go ahead and leave this as is. I like using the flight level change mode anyway. It works fantastic. I can change my speed to change my rate of descent, and that way when I get to where I want to be, or the altitude I want to be at, I can get there at the speed I want to be at as well. So for example, if I wanted to make sure I was at 240 knots when I cross over Brusser, I could go ahead and dramatically, I could just speed this up to 240 and it'll dramatically increase my rate of descent. I don't want to do that. I want to be at 215 knots when I cross Brusser, and so we're going to stick with that. As we go below 18,000 feet here, we're going to change our altimeter to 2987. You can see we're at 2992 right now. So we'll go ahead and, where are we at? Barrow is up here.
Transition altitude, Captain.
There's 2987. I know that sometimes on the video you can't see that as clearly, so I'll zoom it in here. So here's the altimeter setting, 2987, and we just change it by scrolling our mouse up or down on the barometric pressure knob here, and I can just click it and it should go to standard, but I've found that doesn't actually work quite properly in this King Air 350 at the moment. So we're looking good right now. We got a couple more waypoints to go. We're going to be at 12,000 before we get to Brusser. That's okay. We need to cross Brusser at 12,000 feet. So we should be good to go on that. Once we cross Brusser, the next waypoint is Mayhem, and then from Mayhem we'll roll right on. We'll start heading over to our final approach fix at Zerlo. We've flown this approach before, the ILS approach for runway 26, starting at Zerlo. All right, so you got all that information. I'm going to get off of here for now, and I will see you guys when we are on approach. Alright, as you can see, we're just about to turn on to our final approach fix. We are on the approach at this point. We sort of bypassed Saroon there. We're trying to get down to 6,000 feet. It's not doing what I want it to, so I'm just going to go ahead and manually take it on down. It's okay if our speed picks up a little bit, but we want to be at 6,000 feet by the time we get to Tadre there. And then Jagal comes after that, and at Jagal we want to be at 4,000 feet, at or above 4,000 feet. So, and we're turning on to our final approach fix here at this point, and pretty soon here, I'm waiting to see if this will do what, oh boy, it's acting a little silly. I'm waiting to see if this will do what the King Air 200 did. Boy, if you were a passenger in the back of this, you'd be a little miserable right now, wouldn't you? Waiting to see if it's going to do what the King Air 200 did, which is automatically intercept the ILS. We've tuned in the frequency. It's 111.75. You can see it over here in nav 1. I put it on both of them just to make sure I didn't make the mistake like I did last time of only putting it on the inactive in the 200. If it doesn't intercept it on its own, which it should here right around the time we get to Todre, however you want to say that, then we'll go ahead and we'll change our navigation to approach mode, and we will change this to VOR1, if I'm not mistaken, which should be with this button, with this knob right here. So still learning this airplane a little bit, obviously. We've got our flaps in approach mode, so let's do our approach checklist real quick. We've checked our pressurization, cabin sign is on, auto feather switch needs to be armed. That is now armed. Landing gear will come down shortly. Landing lights are already on. Propeller sync comes off, and we should be good to go at this point. The only thing left to do is once we've confirmed that landing is assured, flaps will go to full, yaw damper will come off, and prop levers will go full forward. So that's pretty much it at the moment. That came on because the auto feather is now off. And let's see here. Let's see if we can... yeah, that only lets us change it down here. So let's change it to localizer 1. Let's hit the approach mode. And that's not doing anything. Maybe because we're too high. Alright, so I'm not going to mess around with this. We're going to bring in the next setting of flaps. Maybe. If it lets us. Let's go ahead and bring the gear down. Flaps. Sometimes it doesn't like to go all the way to full for some reason. Not sure where it's going here, but you know what? I'm done messing with that. So, it's kind of on its own program at the moment. Not really my thing, but yeah. Let's go ahead and bring those prop levers all the way forward. Love that sound as always. So clearly we're not flying the ILS on this one. It's not really sure what the deal is. I'm gonna have to spend some more time with this aircraft, but that's alright. I like it. My frame rates are acting really weird. I actually you won't know it from the video, but I had a crash to desktop for some inexplicable reason, and yeah, so kind of weird. Not really sure why I'm getting all this yaw here. Shouldn't be getting quite so much, but I'm getting enough that there it goes. Looked like my prop RPMs were way uneven, which is a little odd considering I have them both tied to a single lever over here on my throttle quadrant. But what are you gonna do? I got a fly buzzing around in front of my head here. It's kind of annoying. Alright, so nothing left to do at this point. We got full flaps. Landing is definitely assured at this point. What else? Gear is down. The only thing left is take the yaw damper off. Let's make sure yaw damper is off. I don't see any indicator that actually tells us whether or not it's off, so not really sure what to do about that. Okay. Looks to me like we're way too low, but our ILS here is saying that we still got to go down further. I think that's wrong.
Light slow.
Yeah, we're way too low. So clearly there's an issue here of some sort. Maybe I need to hit this again. Maybe that's what it was.
Light slow.
Oh yeah, that instantly turned it to green. So yep, that's what it was. I needed to hit this preset right here to turn off the FMS as the selected navigation source. Yes, I know, we're below the glide slope. I'm working on it.
Glide slope.
We'll get there, relax.
Glide slope.
Boy, that thing doesn't mess around, does it? Alright. Sorry about those little black spots in the scenery there. Still not sure why those do that. Bringing the throttles back a little bit now, because we want to be going a little bit slower. And we just want to make sure those are relatively even. And bring in a little bit of trim. We don't want to dive too quick here. And we're pretty good. Yeah, we're spot on, I think. Our speed's pretty good. Probably bring them up just a hair. A little more trim, because we're dropping a little fast there. And a friend of mine who does fly King Airs told me that when you're landing the King Air, you really don't mess with the trim and throttle too much. You really just change the pitch using the yoke. So you get it kind of trimmed where you want it, and then you just change your pitch using the yoke, and that gets you in where you want to be. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Not really messing with the trim too much. Obviously we got a little low there again, so we just pull it up, get back on glide slope, and then nose it back over. So let's go ahead and listen to our call outs as we fly this on in, and don't beat me too much on the landing, but hopefully it'll be smooth and I won't float it all the way down the runway.
$100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
That was a little bumpier than I wanted it to be. I'm not really pleased with that. You saw how I kind of struggled with it a little bit there. But not every landing can be perfect. So gonna bring in a little brakes here. I know it wears out the brakes quick. Alright, there we go. And we're good to go. A little quick still. A little quick for that turn. My apologies there. You probably wouldn't want to... Yeah, we're kind of sliding around the corner there. So yeah, way too fast for that turn. A little embarrassing. My apologies for that. We'll go ahead and we'll taxi on over here. I'm not going to make you watch the whole taxi, but you guys all know that I really like this scenery. And we're going to taxi on up around the corner here. And after landing checklist, let's go ahead and knock that out, and then I'll taxi the rest of the way in on my own. And this thing is going bonkers, man. I've got the throttles all the way back. They're all the way down, and this thing still really wants to go. After landing checklist, landing lights and taxi lights. The landing lights can come off, taxi lights stay on, and I'm still struggling to stay in the middle of the taxiway here. Ice protection off. We actually need to turn the, hold on, we need to take this turn here. We need to turn the anti-ice for the engines on. That should also help reduce those RPMs a little so that it stops trying to taxi so fast. And I know it seems weird because I'm actually on the left of these taxiways that crosses over, and that is actually how they do it in Phoenix for some reason. You would think I'd be on the I'd be taxiing on the one to the right there, but no, we actually take Sierra to cross over this direction. So engine auto ignition needs to come off at this point. Turn those off, bring in just a skosh more throttle here because otherwise we're going to come to a stop. Electrical load's fine, trim set, flaps up. Flaps are coming up right now. A little more throttle there. Let's get this thing moving. And that's it until shutdown. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing taxiing across here, hopefully, eventually. And I will see you once we get it parked. So stay tuned. Okay, we made it to our parking space. It was a bit hairy. This thing's definitely hard to taxi. We want to make sure our parking brake's set. We want to turn our avionics master switch off at this point. She is off. Auto feather switch goes off, which it is. Nope, now it's off. There we go. Light switches all come off with the exception of, you guessed it, beacon switch stays on. Good to go on those. Cabin temp mode needs to go off at this point. That's this one right here. She's off. Vent blowers stay on auto. Radiant heat, don't know where that switch is. Battery is charged. ITT is stabilized. That's this one and this one. And overhead panel switches need to be off. We can probably turn off the fasten seatbelt sign. Turned it off already. We're good to go there. Off there, off there. Oxygen supply control handle, never found the thing. So now we can go ahead and we can cut the engines. 1 and 2 and feather them. They are now feathered and we are good to go. All we have left to do now is turn the battery and the generators off. Right gen, left gen, battery, and we are now shut down. Good times, fantastic. Still a beautiful aircraft, loving it, loving the scenery. Not sure why the airplane is practically... Oh, there we go. Now the... well, it looks like we're missing a building there. Our scenery's all kind of jacked up here, isn't it? Yeah, it really is. Like, the building's not the proper building over there. Wonder what happened to the scenery. There's 2 towers. 2 towers in there. Okay, something clearly wrong with that. My apologies. But nonetheless, not that big a deal. We are done here, and I will see you over on A-Cars here in just a second. Okay, here we are on our A-Cars. You can see that our pilot report is blank. Our data is blank. And you might be thinking to yourself, what happened here? You remember I said I had a crash to desktop. When that happens, what I did here, now look, I've shown you this. If you haven't seen this before, take a look at my A-Cars tutorial video because this is critical right here. I had a crash to desktop just before we got to Zerlo. So we were almost on approach on this flight and my sim crashed. So you go down here to autosave, you have it active, and I have it every 5 minutes. So what happened was I went ahead and ended the flight, cleared the PIRAP, and when I put the bid back in, it gave me the option to resume the flight. You can only do that if it saved it. Because I saved the flight, I was able to resume it from right around the area where I had my crash to desktop. That's critical because I was able to finish the flight. Now, for some reason, when you hit the resume flight, it blanks out all this data. But it's still going to let me file the pilot report. You can see that our total time is 1 hour and 28 minutes, which I can assure you is late at this point. But nonetheless, it'll still file our pilot report for us, and that's what we want. So we'll end flight here. That's done. Now watch, when I click on File PIREP, sure enough, it was Great Lakes Airlines 7167A. That was our flight, and we have a PIREP ID number, which means we're good to go. So even though that all this information is blank up here, because we did the resume flight, since I have that option to save flights every 5 minutes, and it overwrites them. It doesn't save like 600 of them. It overwrites them as it goes. But that allowed me to resume the flight, which is very important. All right, so we're done there. We're done with A-Cars. Let's hop over to the website and see how things look over there. See you in just a second. All right, here we are back on the website, and as you can see, it still shows us as having 7 hours to go, but our location is at Phoenix, and I'm going to show you why. Here's what's going on with this right now. If we take a look down here, Great Lakes Airlines Flight 7167A, that's the flight we just flew, and if we look at our pilot report, click on that, And of course the internet wants to be slow every time I decide to record something, doesn't it? It should come up here in just a second. There we go. So that was our flight, KPGA to KPHX, but you can see, well, now it's been approved. It's auto approved. So apparently that's why it was being slow. The reason it wasn't showing it a second ago is because it hadn't been approved yet. Now it has been. It's auto approved at this point, so we're good. So when we go back, we'll see that our hours are a little bit lower now, or the remaining hours to the next promotion. 58% profit, good. That's what we want. We want to keep our profit margins high. You can see our landing was a little rough. Still getting used to that airplane. That'll happen. I want to just show you this real quick. 2 warnings, and if we click on the flight log, we'll see that both warnings were for landing lights off below 10,000 feet. One when we were climbing out and one when we were descending. So here's the thing. I did flip the landing lights on. You may remember because I went through it during the checklist. For some reason, ACARS is not registering those lights as being on when I flip those switches. That's okay. It's not that big of a deal. I don't like to have any warnings on my PIREPs, but that's not obviously that it was approved, so it's not going to cause it to not be approved. So we're good to go there. And if we jump back over here real quick to our pilot center, we can now see that we're down to 5 hours. Really, we've got what 5 hours and 1 minute it looks like. So, and we've got 4 more flights to go. We were late on that flight. In fact, we've had quite a few delayed flights at this point. That seems to be par for the course. A lot of that has to do with me running my suck as long as I do. I tend to talk a lot. But there it is. So we are done with this flight. We have now completed a total of 13 flights here for Phoenix Virtual Airways, and we're just a mere 5 hours and 1 minute away from that elusive promotion that we're chasing right now. This has been a good time. We're still learning a new airplane. That happens when we're learning new aircraft, and it's going to happen again when we get promoted to first officer and we start flying even more airplanes. And you know what? That's all right because that's part of flight sim. We try to make sure that we understand an aircraft before we dive in and do too many flights. But you know what? That learning curve is something that you guys should see anyway, and I'm glad you're able to see it in these videos. All that being said, it's been a great time. I love that airplane. I'm looking forward to the next flight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give a thumbs up down below. And I ask that you, if you get an opportunity, subscribe to my channel. That'll give you notifications anytime I post a new video. And of course, as always, leave any comments down below if you have questions or concerns about something, or if you're aware of something that I'm not. Hey, I'm okay with the fact that I make mistakes sometimes because guess what? This is a simulator. It's not the real world. In the real world, we can't afford to make mistakes because people get hurt. People die. We don't want that, obviously. But in the simulator, if we make mistakes, we can learn from them a lot easier. So, had a good time. I'm Captain Mac. I'm done running my mouth now. I hope you enjoyed the flight, and I will see you again next time. Have a fantastic day, folks.